7 signs. She secretly wants you. You already know the feeling. Something is different around her. The way she looks at you lasts a second longer than it should. The way she laughs at things that are not that funny. The way she finds reasons to be near you, even when she could easily stay away. Most men notice these moments and then talk themselves out of them. They tell themselves they are imagining things. They tell themselves it is just friendliness. They tell themselves that if she really wanted them, she would say it out loud. And so they stay quiet. They stay safe. And the moment passes. But attraction does not always announce itself with clear words. Sometimes it shows up in small, repeated patterns of behavior that most people overlook. These patterns are not proof. They are not guarantees. Different women express interest in different ways. Context matters. Personality matters. History matters. Still, there are common signals that appear again and again when a woman is drawn to a man and has not yet decided to say it directly. Learning to notice them without becoming obsessed by them is a useful skill. It keeps you from missing opportunities, and it also keeps you from inventing interest where none exists. The goal here is not to turn you into someone who analyzes every glance. The goal is to help you become more present, more observant, and more grounded in your own value, so that when real interest appears, you can respond with calm instead of panic or indifference. One of the earliest signs that often appears is the way she looks at you when she thinks you are not watching. Eye contact is one of the most basic forms of human connection. When someone is interested, their attention tends to return to the person who holds that interest. She may glance at you across a room, then look away quickly when your eyes meet. She may hold your gaze a little longer than polite conversation requires. She may look at your mouth while you speak. These are small things. Alone, they mean little. Together with other signals, they start to form a pattern. Why does this happen? Attention follows interest. The brain registers people who matter more strongly than people who do not. When a woman finds herself looking at you repeatedly, even without deciding to, it can mean that you have entered a space in her awareness that is not neutral. Of course, some people simply have more open body language. Some people look at everyone. That is why the pattern matters more than any single moment. Does she look at other men the same way, in the same setting? Or is there a noticeable difference when her attention turns to you? Another sign that appears frequently is the way she creates or accepts physical closeness. Space is information. Most people protect a certain amount of personal space with people they feel neutral about. When that space shrinks on purpose, something is usually happening. She may sit closer than necessary. She may find reasons for her arm or shoulder to brush yours. She may stay in a doorway talking instead of stepping back. She may lean in when she laughs. These movements are often unconscious at first. The body moves toward what feels good or interesting. This does not mean every touch is an invitation. Friendly people touch. Some cultures touch more than others. What you are looking for is a change from her usual baseline and a tendency for the contact to linger or repeat. When the contact starts to feel intentional rather than accidental, the signal strengthens. The important part for you is not to freeze or overreact. A calm, natural response keeps the energy open. Pulling away sharply or jumping in too hard, both close doors. A third sign is the quality of her attention when you speak. People give more detailed attention to those who matter to them. She may remember small things you mentioned days earlier. She may ask follow-up questions that show she was actually listening. She may bring up topics she knows you care about. This kind of selective memory and curiosity is a form of investment. Time and mental energy are limited resources. When someone spends them on you without being asked, it usually means you occupy a higher place in their awareness. There is a difference between polite listening and engaged listening. Polite listening nods and waits for its turn. Engaged listening builds on what was said. It connects ideas. It shows that the conversation left an imprint. When a woman consistently does this with you, and not with everyone else in the same group, it is worth noticing. A fourth sign is the way her energy changes around you. Some women become more animated. Their voice lifts. They laugh more easily. They talk faster or become playfully teasing. Others become quieter and more focused, as if the rest of the room has faded. Both can be signs of heightened interest. The nervous system responds to people we find attractive. Heart rate can rise. Attention can narrow. The body prepares for connection even when the mind has not yet decided what to do with it. You may notice that she becomes slightly more self-conscious. She adjusts her hair. She checks her appearance in a subtle way. She chooses words more carefully. These small self-presentation behaviors often appear when someone wants to be seen in a positive light by a specific person. Again, context is everything. Compare how she behaves with you to how she behaves with others she is comfortable with. The difference is the signal. A fifth sign is the effort she makes to keep the interaction going. When someone is ready for a conversation to end, they usually give clear cues. They look at the time, they summarize, they step back. When someone wants the interaction to continue, they find ways to extend it. They ask another question. They share one more story. They suggest continuing the talk later. They delay leaving. This does not always mean romantic interest. It can simply mean she enjoys your company. But when it happens repeatedly and is paired with other signs, it becomes more meaningful. People protect their time. Extending time with someone is a form of choice. Choice reveals preference. If she consistently chooses to stay in conversation with you when she could easily exit, that choice is data. A sixth sign appears in how she responds to your absence or your reduced attention. This one is more subtle and often misunderstood. When a man is always available, always initiating, always filling every silence, the other person never has to feel the weight of his absence. When he becomes more centered in his own life and less available on demand, the dynamic can shift. Some women notice the change and become more curious. Others feel the space and move on. The reaction itself is information. If she starts initiating more after you stop over-pursuing, it can indicate that your previous availability had made the connection too easy to take for granted. Scarcity of attention does not create desire from nothing. It can, however, make existing interest more visible by removing the constant reassurance that you would always be there. The key is that you reduce the pursuit because you respect your own time and energy, not because you are running a strategy to make her chase. Intention shows. A seventh sign is the way she tests or teases you. Playful challenges, light teasing, small disagreements that feel more like flirtation than conflict. These can be ways of creating tension and measuring your response. She may joke about your habits. She may disagree with you on something minor, just to see how you handle it. She may give you a hard time in a way that still feels warm. This kind of behavior often appears when someone feels safe enough to play and interested enough to want a reaction. Not every tease is attraction. Some people tease everyone. What you are looking for is a pattern directed at you combined with positive underlying energy. If the teasing feels mean or dismissive, it is probably not interest. If it feels like an invitation to engage, it may be. These 7 patterns do not operate in isolation. They tend to appear in clusters. One glance means little. A glance plus closer, physical distance plus better listening plus extended conversations plus changed energy begins to form a clearer picture. Even then, nothing is certain. Interest can exist and still not lead to anything. Timing, circumstances, her own fears, other options, and many other factors all play a role. The value of noticing the signs is not that they guarantee a result. The value is that they help you stop walking through life half asleep to the signals around you. Many men miss these signs because they are too focused on their own performance. They are busy trying to say the right thing, avoid looking foolish, or manage their own anxiety. Presence is the foundation of observation. When you are calm inside your own skin, you have more capacity to notice what is actually happening in front of you. When you are desperate for validation, every neutral behavior can look like rejection, and every polite smile can look like desire. Desperation distorts perception. This is why the deeper work is not becoming better at reading women. The deeper work is becoming less dependent on any particular woman's interest for your sense of worth. When your value is more stable, you can observe more accurately. You can respond more cleanly. You can walk away more easily when the interest is not mutual. And paradoxically, that stability itself tends to make a man more attractive. People generally feel safer and more drawn to those who do not need them in order to feel okay. Consider a simple hypothetical. Imagine a man who notices that a woman at work laughs more at his comments than at others. finds reasons to stop by his desk, remembers details he mentioned weeks ago, and holds eye contact a little longer than usual. If this man is insecure, he may either freeze and do nothing, or he may overinterpret and start sending long messages that push too hard. If he is more grounded, he can simply continue being himself, increase his own engagement slightly, and see whether the pattern continues or fades. He does not need the interaction to go somewhere in order to feel complete. That freedom changes the quality of every exchange. Another hypothetical. Imagine a man who has been pursuing a woman for months with constant texts and plans. She responds when it is convenient and stays distant otherwise. One day, he decides that the imbalance is no longer acceptable. He stops initiating. He focuses on his own projects, friends, and training. After some time, she reaches out more. In some cases, this happens because the reduction in attention made her notice him differently. In other cases, she simply moves on. Either outcome gives him clearer information than continued one-sided pursuit ever could. The point was never to force a specific reaction. The point was to stop participating in a dynamic that drained him. Different women will respond differently to the same behavior. Some will interpret reduced attention as disinterest and disappear. Some will interpret it as confidence and become more engaged. Some will feel challenged and try to regain the previous level of attention. You cannot control which response appears. You can only control whether you are acting from self-respect or from strategy. Self-respect is sustainable. Strategy eventually shows its seams. There is also the matter of your own signals. Attraction is rarely one-directional for long. If you are closed off, tense, or overly eager, you change the field she is responding to. Calm presence, clear boundaries, and a life that does not revolve around any one person tend to create a more attractive environment. This is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming centered. Centered men are easier to trust and more interesting to pursue because they are not constantly asking the other person to fill an emptiness. Fear of rejection keeps many men from acting even when signs are present. Rejection feels like a judgment on your worth. In reality, it is usually information about fit, timing, or the other person's capacity. Treating rejection as data rather than as a final verdict on your value makes it far less frightening. You can notice interest, respond to it, and accept whatever follows without collapsing. That capacity is attractive in itself. Some men go to the opposite extreme. They see interest everywhere. Every smile becomes proof. Every polite conversation becomes a green light. This creates its own problems. It leads to awkward advances, damaged friendships, and a reputation for misreading situations. The middle path is careful observation without forced conclusions. Collect patterns over time. Look for consistency. Allow the other person room to show more or to show less. Do not rush to label what you see. Culture and individual personality shape how interest is expressed. Some women are naturally more reserved. Interest from them may look quieter. Some are more expressive. Interest from them may look obvious. Trying to apply one universal checklist to every woman will produce errors. The more useful skill is learning a particular person's baseline and noticing deviations from it. That requires actual attention to the specific human in front of you, rather than a set of rules applied to a category. Social settings also change the meaning of signals. Behavior at a loud party is different from behavior during a quiet, one-on-one conversation. Alcohol changes behavior. Group dynamics change behavior. What looks like strong interest in one context may simply be social lubrication in another. This is another reason single moments are unreliable. Patterns across different settings carry more weight. When several of the signs appear together and persist over time, it becomes reasonable to increase your own engagement and see what happens. This does not require grand gestures. It can be as simple as initiating a conversation you might previously have waited for, suggesting a plan that moves the interaction outside the usual context, or allowing a moment of silence and eye contact to last a little longer. Small, congruent steps often work better than dramatic moves. They give both people room to adjust. If the interest is mutual, the interaction usually begins to feel more reciprocal. She initiates more. The conversations deepen. The physical comfort increases. If the interest was one-sided or temporary, the signs tend to fade when you stop carrying the full weight of the connection. Either way, you gain clarity. Clarity is more valuable than prolonged ambiguity. Many men stay in ambiguous situations for far too long because the ambiguity still provides a small amount of hope and intermittent attention. That intermittent attention can become addictive. It keeps you checking, waiting, explaining, and lowering your standards. Recognizing the pattern of intermittent reinforcement is useful. When attention is unpredictable, the brain often works harder to secure it. Breaking that cycle requires deciding that your peace is worth more than the occasional hit of validation. Emotional independence does not mean you stop caring about connection. It means your sense of worth does not rise and fall with every text or glance. It means you can enjoy interest when it appears without becoming dependent on it. It means you can feel the disappointment of interest fading without treating it as a personal catastrophe. That stability makes you better company and better at reading situations accurately. There is a quiet confidence that appears when a man stops needing any particular woman to confirm that he is enough. He becomes more selective. He becomes less reactive. He becomes more interesting because his attention is no longer scattered across every possible source of approval. Women, like men, tend to feel the difference between someone who is choosing them and someone who is needing them. Choice feels better than need. This does not mean playing games. Withholding attention as a tactic to create anxiety is a different matter from simply refusing to overinvest in someone who is not investing back. One is manipulation. The other is self-respect. The internal difference is visible over time. Manipulation eventually requires more and more effort to maintain. Self-respect becomes simpler the more you practice it. Consider how much mental energy many men spend trying to decode whether a woman likes them. That energy could be going into skill, health, friendships, work, and purpose. When those areas are strong, the question of any one person's interest becomes less central. Paradoxically, this often improves the quality of romantic interactions because you arrive as a more complete person, rather than as someone looking to be completed. The signs themselves are only useful if they lead to better decisions. Noticing interest and then continuing to behave as if you have none is a missed chance. Noticing interest and then becoming overly intense is another kind of miss. The balanced response is to match the energy without exceeding it, to stay grounded in your own life, and to allow the connection to develop at a pace that feels mutual. Some men believe that if a woman really wanted them, she would make it completely obvious. In some cases, that is true. In many cases, social conditioning, fear of rejection, uncertainty about the man's interest, or simple personality differences keep the signals more subtle. Waiting for perfect clarity can mean waiting forever. Learning to notice and respond to imperfect but consistent signals is part of adult relating. At the same time, never invent clarity where it does not exist. If the signs are weak, inconsistent, or mixed with clear disinterest, the honest move is to step back. Forcing a narrative of secret interest onto neutral behavior is a form of self-deception. It keeps you stuck. Prefer the discomfort of clear non-interest over the false comfort of imagined desire. The deeper lesson underneath all of this is that your attention and energy are valuable. When you give them freely to people who do not value them, you teach yourself that your resources are cheap. When you become more careful about where they go, you raise their perceived value, including in your own mind. This is not about arrogance. It is about accurate appraisal of your own limited time and emotional capacity. A man who respects his own attention becomes better at noticing when someone else is offering theirs. He also becomes better at declining situations that require him to do all the work. Over time, this selectivity improves the quality of the people who remain in his life. It is a form of quiet standards. None of this guarantees that any particular woman will want you. No set of observations can create desire that is not already present. What it can do is help you stop missing the desire that is present, stop inventing the desire that is not, and stop abandoning your own center while you wait for someone else to decide your worth. The most attractive version of these skills is the one that is almost invisible. You are not performing observation. You are simply present, calm, and responsive. You notice more because you are not lost in your own anxiety. You respond more cleanly because you are not trying to force an outcome. You walk away more easily because your life already contains meaning that does not depend on any one person's approval. That state is worth building for its own sake. The romantic side effects are secondary. When a man becomes harder to shake, clearer in his boundaries, and more absorbed in a life that matters to him, the signs of interest from others often become both more frequent and easier to read. Not because he has learned tricks, but because he has become someone whose attention is genuinely worth seeking. So notice the glances that last. Notice the space that shrinks. Notice the questions that show real listening. Notice the energy that rises or focuses. Notice the efforts to keep the conversation alive. Notice how she responds when you stop overgiving. Notice the playful challenges that feel like invitations. Collect these observations without turning them into an obsession. Then respond from a place of self-respect rather than need. If the interest is real and mutual, the connection will have room to grow. If it is not, you will have spent less of yourself on something that was never going to meet you halfway. Either outcome leaves you stronger than the alternative of perpetual guessing and one-sided effort. Most men do not need more techniques for getting attention. They need more capacity to remain whole, whether the attention arrives or not. The signs are useful. The independence is essential. Build the independence first. The ability to read the signs will follow more naturally, and the way you use what you read will be cleaner. Your time is limited. Your attention is limited. Your emotional energy is limited. Treat them accordingly. When you do, you stop being someone who waits to be chosen and become someone who chooses. That shift changes the entire experience of relating to other people. It also changes what you are willing to accept. And that, more than any single signal, is what ultimately improves the quality of the connections you form. The next time you find yourself wondering whether her behavior means something, pause. Look at the pattern rather than the moment. Look at your own state rather than only at hers. Ask whether you are observing or inventing. Ask whether your response will come from calm or from hunger. Then act in a way that leaves your self-respect intact no matter how she responds. That is the real skill. Everything else is secondary. There is more to understand here. The signs themselves are only the surface. Underneath them sit a set of emotional and social forces that shape how interest appears and how it is hidden. Fear of rejection is one of the strongest. Many people have learned that showing too much interest too soon can lead to embarrassment or loss of leverage. So the interest stays partially concealed. It leaks out through behavior instead of being declared. This is why the signals tend to be indirect at first. Directness feels riskier. Pride plays a role as well. Some women do not want to be the one who appears to want more. They prefer the man to take the visible lead, so that any potential rejection falls on him. This is not universal, but it is common enough that many of the clearer signals still stop short of an explicit statement. The man who waits for a verbal declaration may wait a long time even when the behavioral evidence is already present. Curiosity is another force. When a woman finds a man interesting, her mind returns to him. She notices details. She wonders what he thinks. She tests small reactions to see how he responds. This mental occupation often shows up as increased attention, better memory for his words, and a tendency to create opportunities for contact. The curiosity is not always conscious. It simply directs her focus. Attachment patterns also influence the expression of interest. Someone with a more secure style may show interest more openly and consistently. Someone with a more anxious style may show intense interest mixed with withdrawal. Someone with a more avoidant style may show interest in subtle ways while keeping emotional distance. You cannot diagnose an attachment style from a few interactions, but you can notice whether the interest feels steady or mixed. Steady interest is easier to build on. Mixed interest requires more careful boundaries. Social approval adds another layer. In some groups, it is acceptable to be open about attraction. In others, it is not. A woman may dampen or disguise her interest because of how it would look to friends, co-workers, or family. The signals become quieter in public and clearer in private. This is why behavior that changes when the two of you are alone can be more informative than behavior in a group. Habits of politeness can mask or mimic interest. Some people are warm with everyone. Their baseline friendliness can look like attraction if you do not know their normal range. This is why comparing her behavior toward you with her behavior toward others is useful. Relative difference carries more information than absolute behavior. Now consider what happens on the man's side when these signs appear. Many men experience a sudden rise in hope mixed with anxiety. The hope says maybe this is finally mutual. The anxiety says do not mess it up. That combination often produces either paralysis or over-effort. Paralysis looks like noticing the signs and then doing nothing different. Over-effort looks like suddenly increasing attention, compliments, or availability in a way that feels disproportionate. Both responses can disrupt the natural development of the connection. A calmer response is possible. You notice the cluster of signs. You allow yourself to feel the interest without needing it to mean everything. You match the energy with a slight increase in your own engagement. You stay rooted in the rest of your life. You give the interaction room to grow or to fade without treating either outcome as a referendum on your worth. This approach is rarer than it should be. It is also more effective at preserving both dignity and possibility. Imagine a man who works in an office where a colleague has begun to linger near his desk, laugh more at his comments, and remember personal details he shared in passing. If he is hungry for validation, he may start finding excuses to walk by her area more often, send longer messages, or interpret every neutral interaction as deeper interest. The dynamic can become uneven quickly. If instead he continues his normal work, engages warmly when she initiates, and occasionally initiates himself without pressure, the interaction has space to reveal its true nature. Either the interest continues and deepens, or it remains polite and limited. He learns the truth with less distortion. Another situation. A man has been texting a woman he met socially. Her replies are positive but inconsistent in timing and length. He notices that when he reduces his own messaging, she sometimes initiates. He could interpret this as a game and try to manipulate the frequency further. Or he could decide that he will only invest attention at a level that feels reciprocal and then observe whether reciprocity appears. The second path protects his peace. It also filters for people who are willing to meet him halfway. The difference between strategy and self-respect is often invisible at the beginning and obvious over time. Strategy requires constant calculation. Self-respect becomes simpler. Strategy is focused on controlling her reaction. Self-respect is focused on controlling his own participation. One creates tension that eventually leaks. The other creates clarity. It is worth examining the common belief that men must always pursue and women must always be pursued. This belief creates a one-directional dynamic that many men accept without question. They initiate every conversation, every plan, every escalation. When the woman does not match the effort, they interpret it as a need for even more pursuit. The result is exhaustion and resentment on one side, and reduced respect on the other. Interest that is never required to show itself through effort remains untested. When a man stops carrying the entire weight, he discovers whether the interest was real enough to move toward him or only real enough to accept his movement. This does not mean a man should never initiate. Initiation is often necessary. It means the initiation should not be endless in the face of little return. There is a point at which continued pursuit stops being confidence and starts being self-abandonment. Learning to recognize that point is part of emotional maturity. Fear of loneliness keeps many men past that point. The intermittent attention still feels better than none. The possibility still feels better than the finality of walking away. But the cost is paid in self-respect and in the quality of the connections that are allowed to form. A man who can tolerate periods of less romantic attention without collapsing is freer to choose well. He is also more attractive to people who value strength over neediness. The signs of interest become more useful when you are not desperate to find them. Desperation makes every ambiguous behavior look promising and every clear boundary look temporary. Calm makes the same behaviors easier to classify accurately. This is why the internal work and the observational skills support each other. Improve one and the other improves as well. Consider the role of your own life structure. A man whose days are empty has more mental space to obsess over small signals. A man whose days contain training, work that matters, friendships, and projects has less room for obsession. The signals still register, but they do not dominate. This balance protects perception. It also makes the man more interesting because his attention is not solely available for romantic validation. Purpose is not a trick to attract women. It is a foundation for a life that does not require constant external approval. When that foundation is in place, the question of whether a particular woman secretly wants you becomes less urgent. You can notice the signs, respond appropriately, and continue living. The outcome matters less because your worth is not on the line in the same way. Still, the signs remain practical information. Ignoring clear mutual interest out of excessive pride or fear is its own form of self-sabotage. The mature path is neither chasing every possible signal nor refusing to act on strong ones. It is accurate reading followed by proportionate response. Proportion matters. A woman who has shown mild interest does not need an intense declaration. A woman who has shown consistent, multi-layered interest can handle a clearer move. Matching the level keeps the interaction balanced. Exceeding it creates pressure. Falling short of it can look like disinterest, even when interest exists. Timing also matters. Interest that appears early in an acquaintance may need more time to develop. Interest that appears after longer familiarity may be ready for more direct expression. There is no universal schedule. Paying attention to the specific rhythm of the connection is more useful than applying a formula. Rejection remains a possibility even when signs are strong. Interest can exist and still not lead to action for reasons that have nothing to do with your value. She may be dealing with personal issues. She may be interested, but not available. She may be interested, but not ready. She may simply change her mind. Treating these outcomes as information rather than as personal failure preserves your ability to engage again in the future without carrying unnecessary scars. Some men respond to rejection by becoming cynical. They decide that all signs are meaningless or that all women are manipulative. This is another form of distortion. It protects against future disappointment by refusing to see positive data. The cost is isolation and missed connection. A more accurate stance is that some interest is real, some is not. Some leads somewhere, and some does not. You can stay open without being naive and careful without being closed. The 7 signs discussed earlier are starting points, not a complete map. Other signals exist. Consistency over time is more important than any individual behavior. The presence of reciprocal effort is more important than the presence of flattering attention. A woman who shows interest through actions that cost her something, time, vulnerability, initiative, is usually more serious than one who only shows interest through low-cost behaviors, like smiles and short replies. Low-cost interest is easy to give and easy to withdraw. Higher-cost interest requires more commitment and therefore carries more weight. Learning to distinguish the two saves time and emotional energy. Your response to interest also trains the dynamic. If you reward inconsistent attention with increased effort, you teach that inconsistency works. If you match consistent interest with consistent interest of your own, you reinforce balance. Over many interactions, this shapes the kind of connections you end up in. It is a quiet form of selection. None of this requires treating women as projects or puzzles. It requires treating yourself as someone whose participation has conditions. The conditions are simple: mutual respect, reciprocal effort, emotional safety. When those are present, the signs of interest can be enjoyed and built upon. When they are absent, the signs become less relevant because the foundation is missing. Many men focus so much on detecting interest that they forget to examine whether the interested person is actually someone they want. Interest from the wrong person is not a prize. It is a distraction. Clarity about your own standards makes the reading of signals more purposeful. You're not just asking whether she wants you. You're also asking whether you want the version of connection that is available with her. This two-way evaluation is often missing. Men who feel scarce in their romantic lives can become so focused on being chosen that they stop choosing. The result is participation in dynamics that do not serve them. Reclaiming the right to choose changes the emotional tone of every interaction. You are no longer only hoping to be selected, you are also selecting. When that shift occurs, the signs of interest are received differently. They become information about possibility rather than evidence of your worth. the pressure drops. The observation becomes cleaner. The response becomes freer. Building this stance takes practice. It requires tolerating the discomfort of not knowing. It requires resisting the urge to force clarity through excessive pursuit or excessive withdrawal. It requires returning again and again to your own life as the primary source of meaning. Each time you do this, the habit strengthens. Over time, the process becomes less deliberate and more natural. You notice patterns without analyzing them to death. You respond without overthinking. You leave situations that do not meet you without drama. This is the practical expression of emotional independence in the realm of attraction. The title of this conversation points to secret interest. Secrecy itself is worth examining. Why would interest stay secret? Sometimes because it is new and uncertain. Sometimes because the woman is waiting for clearer signals from the man. Sometimes because external constraints make open expression difficult. Sometimes because the interest is mild and not worth the risk of statement. Understanding these possibilities keeps you from assuming that hidden interest is always strong interest waiting to be unlocked. Sometimes it is simply mild interest that will remain mild. Strong interest tends to find ways to make itself known, even if the ways are behavioral rather than verbal. Mild interest may produce occasional signs without ever intensifying. Learning to tell the difference protects you from investing heavily in something that was never going to deepen. Your own behavior influences whether mild interest stays mild or has room to grow. Pressure usually shrinks it. Calm availability sometimes allows it to expand. Absence of any engagement can let it fade. There is no perfect formula, only better and worse probabilities based on the specific people involved. The most reliable predictor of a healthy development is mutual investment that increases gradually. Signs from her side. Proportionate response from yours. Further signs. Further response. At each stage, both people are free to continue or to stop. That freedom is what keeps the connection clean. When men remove that freedom by over-pursuing, they often create the very resistance they hoped to overcome. When they remove that freedom by sudden coldness after previous intensity, they often create confusion rather than desire. Steady, self-respecting engagement is rarer and usually more effective. It is also more honest. You are not trying to engineer a feeling in someone else. You are offering a clear version of yourself and seeing whether it is met. That honesty is attractive to people who value substance. It is less attractive to people who prefer games. The filtering is useful. As you practice this, you will still misread some situations. Everyone does. The goal is not perfect accuracy. The goal is fewer costly errors and faster recovery when errors occur. A misread that costs you a week of distraction is better than a misread that costs you months of one-sided effort. Calibration improves with honest review of outcomes. After an interaction, you can ask simple questions. Did the pattern continue or fade? Did my response feel proportional? Did I abandon my own standards in order to keep the possibility alive? The answers refine future observation and future behavior. This kind of review is more valuable than collecting more signs. Signs without self-awareness lead to repeated mistakes. Self-awareness turns even limited data into better decisions. The larger context is a life that does not require constant romantic validation to feel worthwhile. When that life is being built, the stakes of any one connection drop. You can enjoy interest without clinging to it. You can accept its absence without despair. You can act on clear signals without desperation. That state is the real foundation. The ability to notice the 7 signs is a useful secondary skill that becomes more accurate and less urgent once the foundation is in place. Many men reverse the order. They try to master the reading of interest while their internal sense of worth remains unstable. The result is improved detection paired with poor use of what is detected. They see the signs and then respond from need, rather than from choice. The outcome is often the same frustration they hoped to escape. Start with the internal stability. Let the observational skill grow alongside it. Use the signs as information, rather than as fuel for fantasy or fear. Respond in ways that leave your self-respect intact. Accept that some interest will lead somewhere and some will not. Keep building a life that remains meaningful either way. That is the practical path. It does not promise that any particular woman will want you. It does promise that you will spend less of yourself on dynamics that diminish you, and that you will be more available for the connections that actually fit. Over time, that difference compounds. The signs are real. They appear, they can be noticed, they can be responded to. But they are not the main event. The main event is the kind of man you are becoming while you notice them. Become someone whose attention is valuable, whose boundaries are clear, and whose peace does not depend on being chosen. The rest tends to organize itself around that. There is still more that belongs in this conversation. The signs do not exist in a vacuum. They interact with a man's own behavior, his history, and the stories he tells himself about what interest should look like. Many men carry an unspoken rule that real interest must be obvious, persistent, and low risk for them to accept. Anything less is dismissed as friendliness or coincidence. This rule protects against disappointment, but it also filters out a large amount of real but imperfectly expressed interest. Life rarely delivers perfect signals. Waiting for them is a form of self-protection that can become self-limitation. Other men carry the opposite rule. Any positive attention is treated as strong interest until proven otherwise. This leads to overinvestment in weak signals and repeated experiences of confusion when the attention does not escalate. Both extremes distort reality. The middle position is harder to hold and more useful. It accepts that interest often appears in partial, inconsistent, or subtle forms, and it requires enough self-respect to test the interest without abandoning standards. Testing does not mean games. It means offering a clear, low-pressure invitation for more and observing the response. A suggestion to meet outside the usual context. A slightly more personal question. A moment of sustained eye contact that is allowed to land. The response to these small moves provides better data than continued passive observation. If the interest is real, it usually has room to answer. If it is not, the answer is also useful. Some men avoid even these small tests because they fear the possible no. The no feels like confirmation of inadequacy. In practice, the no is usually confirmation of mismatch or timing. Treating it as information rather than as identity keeps the emotional cost manageable. You can collect a series of clear no's without concluding that you are unwanted in general. You can also collect a series of clear yeses without concluding that you are universally desired. Both conclusions are exaggerations. Specific fit is more accurate than global verdicts. The emotional mechanism behind overreading or underreading often involves past experiences. A man who has been rejected after showing interest may become hyper-cautious. A man who has received intermittent attention for long periods may become hyper-vigilant for any sign of return. These histories shape perception. Awareness of the history reduces its unconscious control. You can notice the urge to dismiss a signal or to inflate it, and then look at the actual pattern with more neutrality. Neutrality is not indifference. It is the ability to see what is there without immediately turning it into a story about your future or your worth. From neutrality, you can still feel interest, still feel disappointment, still choose to act. You simply do these things with less distortion. Another layer is the social environment. In some workplaces, open flirtation carries professional risk. In some friend groups, pairing off is complicated by existing loyalties. In some family contexts, external opinions carry weight. These pressures can keep interest quieter than it would otherwise be. A woman may show clearer signs in private than in public for reasons that have nothing to do with the strength of her interest. Context again becomes essential. When the environment is constrained, the signs that do appear carry more weight because they required more effort to express. A private comment, a longer look when others are not watching, a message sent outside the usual channel. These can indicate that the interest was strong enough to overcome the constraint. Public warmth in an unconstrained environment may mean less by comparison. Your response should still remain proportionate. Constrained environments also make overreading more costly. Misinterpreting friendliness as romantic interest in a professional setting can damage reputation and comfort. Careful observation and slow testing remain the safer path. The passage of time itself is a signal. Interest that appears and then remains consistent across weeks is different from interest that appears intensely for a few days and then fades. Consistency suggests a more stable underlying preference. Intensity without consistency often reflects mood, novelty, or temporary circumstances. Tracking the pattern across time protects you from being pulled into short-lived spikes. Some men become discouraged when interest is slow to escalate. They interpret the lack of rapid progress as lack of real desire. In many cases, the slower pace simply reflects caution, competing priorities, or a preference for gradual development. Pushing for faster escalation can create resistance even when the interest is genuine. Matching the existing pace while remaining clear about your own availability often works better. Clarity about your own availability is part of self-respect. If you are interested, it is honest to let that be known through behavior and, when appropriate, through words. Hiding your interest indefinitely while waiting for perfect signs from her can become its own form of dishonesty. Mutual interest requires both people to take some risk of being seen. Waiting for the other person to take all the risk is rarely a foundation for a balanced connection. The risk does not have to be large. It can be a clear expression of enjoyment of her company, a specific invitation, or a statement that you would like to see her again. These moves give her something concrete to respond to. Ambiguous lingering can continue for a long time without resolution. Clear, low-pressure offers tend to produce clearer answers. When the answer is positive, the connection can deepen. When the answer is negative or mixed, you have information that passive waiting would not have supplied. Either result is preferable to prolonged uncertainty that keeps you half committed and half distracted. Distraction is one of the hidden costs of ambiguous interest. Mental energy spent reviewing conversations, checking for messages, and imagining outcomes is energy not spent on other parts of life. The cumulative effect can be significant. Learning to notice the signs, respond cleanly, and then return attention to your own path reduces that drain. It also makes you better company when you are with her, because you are less preoccupied with decoding and more present in the actual interaction. Presence itself is a signal. A man who is mentally elsewhere, analyzing or performing, is less attractive than a man who is simply there. The ability to be present is supported by internal stability. When you are not using the interaction to regulate your own sense of worth, you have more capacity to notice her and to respond in real time. This improves both the accuracy of your reading and the quality of the connection. The 7 signs described earlier become easier to see when you are present. The longer glance is registered, the closer seating is felt, the better listening is appreciated, the change in energy is noticed, the effort to continue is recognized, the response to your reduced availability is observed, the playful challenge is met without overthinking. Presence turns the signs from abstract concepts into lived data. This is why the practical advice is not only about what to look for, it is also about the state from which you look. Cultivate a state in which your worth is not on the table in every interaction. From that state, the signs are information rather than evidence in a trial about whether you are enough. The difference is profound. Some men hear this and conclude that they should become emotionally unavailable. That is a misunderstanding. Emotional unavailability is a defense. Emotional independence is a strength. The independent man can still feel, still desire, still invest. He simply does not require the investment to be returned in order to remain intact. That capacity allows deeper connection when the interest is mutual, because he is not constantly protecting himself from possible loss. The independent man can also leave more cleanly when the interest is not mutual. He does not need to extract a final explanation or a softened rejection in order to go. He takes the information and reallocates his attention. This cleanliness is rare and often respected even by people who are not interested in him romantically. Building that independence is the longer project. The signs of interest are the shorter-term data. Use the data. Do not let the data use you. Notice the cluster of behaviors. Respond with proportion. Protect your standards. Keep building the life that makes any single outcome less decisive. Over months and years, this approach changes the average quality of your interactions. You spend less time in one-sided dynamics. You recognize reciprocal interest faster. You recover from non-interest faster. You become harder to manipulate through intermittent attention. You become easier to connect with for people who value directness and stability. The signs will still appear. Some will be real. Some will be misread. Some will lead to something. some will not. The constant is the man who is doing the noticing. Make that man someone you respect. The rest of the process becomes cleaner from there. You do not need to become an expert at reading every possible signal. You need to become competent at noticing clear patterns, responding without losing yourself, and returning to your own path regardless of the result. That competence is enough. It is also rare enough to stand out. Most men are either too cautious to act on real interest or too hungry to distinguish real interest from polite warmth. The man who can do both, act on the real and decline the merely polite, occupies a smaller and more effective category. The 7 signs help you move toward that category. The internal work keeps you there. Keep the signs in perspective. They are useful. They are not destiny. They can guide your next small step. They cannot guarantee the destination. Your job is to take the step with your self-respect intact, and then meet whatever follows with the same steadiness. That is the practice. That is the skill. That is what turns the observation of interest into something that actually improves your life rather than merely occupying your mind. The next time you notice the longer look, the closer body, the better attention, the shifted energy, the extended conversation, the response to your space, or the playful challenge, pause briefly, check your own state, then respond in a way that you will still respect tomorrow, whether she meets you or not. That single habit, repeated, changes more than any list of signs alone ever could. One final stretch of thought belongs here because the subject is not complete without it. The signs of interest are only one half of a larger picture. The other half is what you do with your own desire once you notice them. Desire is not a problem. Acting on it without regard for reciprocity or timing can become one. Suppressing it out of fear can become another. The balanced path is to feel the desire. Notice whether it is met by corresponding signs, and then choose a response that keeps your dignity and her freedom intact. This balance is harder than it sounds because desire narrows attention. When you want someone, the signs that confirm the want become more visible, and the signs that contradict it become easier to dismiss. Awareness of this bias helps. You can deliberately look for disconfirming evidence as well as confirming evidence. Does she also create distance? Does she fail to follow through on suggested plans? Does her energy drop when the interaction becomes more personal? These counter signals matter as much as the positive ones. A man who only collects positive signs will eventually overinvest. A man who only collects negative signs will eventually underinvest. The disciplined approach is to collect both and weigh the overall pattern. This requires a level of emotional neutrality that most people do not practice. It is worth practicing. The neutrality is not coldness. It is the refusal to let hope or fear dictate the reading of the data. From that place, you can still feel strongly. You can still hope the interest is mutual. You can still feel disappointment if it is not. You simply do not let those feelings rewrite the facts in front of you. Facts in human interaction are never perfectly clear. Behavior is ambiguous. Motives are private. Context shifts. The best you can do is improve the quality of your observations and the cleanliness of your responses. Perfect certainty is not available. Sufficient clarity for the next decision usually is. When the cluster of signs is strong and consistent, the next decision is often to increase your own engagement in a clear, low-pressure way. When the cluster is weak or mixed, the next decision is often to maintain your current level or reduce it. When the cluster disappears, the next decision is to reallocate your attention. These are not rigid rules. They are probability-based guidelines that reduce costly errors. The cost of errors is not only emotional, it is also temporal. Time spent in ambiguous, low reciprocity dynamics is time not spent on higher probability connections or on non-romantic parts of life that build long-term strength. Opportunity cost is real, even when it is invisible in the moment. Some men stay in low reciprocity situations because the alternative feels like starting over. Starting over is often exactly what is required. The willingness to start over, repeatedly if necessary, is a form of strength. It keeps standards from eroding. It keeps hope from becoming a trap. Hope is useful when it motivates clean action. It becomes a trap when it justifies continued investment in the absence of return. Learning the difference is part of maturity. The 7 signs give you better data for that learning. They do not remove the need for judgment. They simply improve the input to the judgment. Use them that way. Do not turn them into a checklist that replaces thinking. Do not turn them into a fantasy that replaces reality testing. Keep them in their proper place as useful observations within a larger practice of self-respect and clear seeing. That larger practice is the real subject. The signs are a doorway into it. Walk through the doorway. Then keep walking toward the kind of man who can notice interest without being ruled by it, respond to it without abandoning himself, and release it without bitterness when it is not returned. That man has more options, better connections, and a quieter mind. The signs helped him get there, but the work on himself is what keeps him there. You already have everything you need to begin. You can start noticing more carefully today. You can start responding more cleanly today. You can start protecting your attention more deliberately today. The results compound. The man who does this for months is not the same as the man who only understands it intellectually. Practice turns the ideas into instinct. Instinct that is trained by self-respect is more reliable than instinct trained by need. Train the better version. Let the signs of interest become information that serves that training, rather than a substitute for it. That is how the observation of whether she secretly wants you becomes secondary to the more important question of whether you respect the way you are showing up. Regardless of her answer, the answer will vary. Your standard does not have to. Hold the standard. Read the signs. Respond with proportion. Return to your path. Repeat. That is the entire method. It is simple. It is not easy. It is effective. And it leaves you stronger at every stage. Whether the interest you noticed turns into something or simply becomes one more piece of clear information in a life that is already moving forward.